There we go. What's up? Yeah. So I wanted to do this video. I wanted to really follow up on some of the stuff that I talked about last video, and I've actually spoke about this many times before. So some of this is just going to be me reiterating that and maybe repeating some things that you've already said. But let's set the precedent. So, like for example, the video I did yesterday, and I talked about how was it yesterday or the day before? Well, basically, I discussed how there's these people that always expect the libertarians to come to their defense, and they appeal to the philosophy, more so libertarianism when it suits them, and they expect to be defended by libertarians in the event there's some, like, I don't know, big time, like, act of, like, say statism, and they expect us to come to the defense of those said groups. And of course, I reject that notion. I think it's stupid for them to expect us when they have mocked us. They've mocked our ideology. They've mocked the philosophy that we adopt. They've advocated the same things that are against what it is that in principle goes against libertarianism. They have advocated for the state. They've been part of the state. They've advocated that the state be used to do these things. And when it backfires and becomes more unfavorable, they expect to be defended by libertarians or expect us to come to their defense because they're like, oh, where are the libertarians? Oh, they're not here. They're hypocrites. They're contradicting themselves. They don't really care about freedom. And it's just such a non-point, especially considering none of these groups have ever came to the defense of libertarians ever. And I don't expect them to, because we're not friends. We are enemies. And I'm glad we're making that clear. And they're hopefully going to understand at some point that we aren't the same and we're not on the same team. Now, there are a lot of libertarians that fall into this trap that is set by these guys where they expect to be helped by the libertarians. Libertarians sometimes, unfortunately, my fellow libertarians, most of them are party members. I'm not. But the ones I'm referring to generally are. And that is, they run around like sad puppy dogs. No confidence. Looking for people to cling to. Looking for different ideologies, groups, more so movements, to try to latch on to, expecting to be embraced and loved by said groups. And it never works. You think they realize this, but it's the act of despotism, and this is why I say the libertarians need to start acting like actual leaders, acting as if their philosophy means something to themselves, first and foremost, and leading with that, leading with the fact that they are libertarians, leading with the fact that they have the ideas on their side, and acting accordingly, instead of acting as if we are, again, the puppies, sad puppies, trying to cling to different movements and hoping that they'll embrace our ideas or hoping that they'll accept us, when it's not going to happen, at least not like that in terms of a strategy. So libertarians' inability to read the room and be confident in what it is that they believe in. But when we talk about like state, let's say, look, this is what I've said, and this is the comparison that I'll continue to use. When it comes to, let's say, the active, more communistic guys, right? The anti-private property rights, anti-liberty types that tend to participate in these more aggressive forms of, if you want to call them protesting. Generally, they're not protests, but those types are not friends of liberty, and they're certainly enemies. And I say that to say that the state is also the enemy. One may be bigger than the other. They're not equal. I would never say that they're equal, like non-state actors and state actors are not equal. But you have to understand the philosophy of libertarianism in order to understand why I understand we are not required by our principles to defend you at all. That's just a courtesy. Now, of course, you have to pick and choose when it's appropriate to defend people or defend something, but there's nothing wrong with saying something is wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying something is not righteous, is against libertarianism in principle. I would encourage you to do that. Let's say, for example, the state, in the event they arrested someone for a crime that has absolutely no victim, so the only reason it's seen as such is because it was written on a piece of paper by way of the state, and now it's being enforced by their agents. That can happen. It happens all the time. It didn't start yesterday. This whole, oh, well, we're going down this rabbit hole if we don't interfere is nonsensical, because what happens in terms of these people saying that a protester was arrested or protesters were arrested is not anything that started yesterday. State is predicated on being able to do that. And quite often, some of the people that they're aggressing upon when they kidnap advocate for them to do that exact thing, right? Just when it's against the people that they generally agree with. This is why it's hilarious for me to see these people that have advocated state mandatory lockdowns, a state mandatory mask wearing, trying to ask for libertarians to come for their defense. You don't get to do that. No. But communists, or those sort of left, those more, let's say, they may say they're anti-statist, but they're not. But those sort of communistic guys, I recognize communism as a philosophy that is, if not one of the most dangerous ideologies there is to adopt. Certainly when you mix those with statism. When you think about the mass forms of violence in terms of by way of the state, the ones that have done that are the ones that have mixed the communism with it, which I would say it actually, definitely when you consider Marxism, actually implies that they didn't shy away from that. Marx didn't shy away from it. What do you think the dictatorship of the proletariat was when effectively these people become the state? But when you take that into consideration and you look at the Pol Pots of the world, the Maos, the Stalins, and, hell, between just those three and all do pockets of Africa, between those, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people dead. Hell, if we want to add, I say, well, they don't like when I pin Hitler on them. I will say that I don't think Hitler was a Marxist. He was a socialist. He just wasn't a Marxist. But when you consider even those that I mentioned, and those guys leading with communism and it resulting in the death of so many different people, and it's always in the name of we're trying to help the people that are within this geographical area that we rule over. I find it as something that is very, very dangerous. And these guys, a lot of them, want the power that the state has for themselves. And the only reason a lot of them, and this includes other forms of leftists, are in opposition to the current state is because it gets in the way of what they want to advocate. And this is why I say they're like rival gangs. I think it's the perfect analogy. And when it comes to rival nobody would expect someone to come to the defense of a non-innocent person in terms of if different mafia members or different gang members were at each other's throats and there was a conflict there. You generally wouldn't expect people to come to their defense, but when you apply to for whatever reason, a very dangerous ideology in communism, people expect us to throw that out the window. No. Now, I'm not saying that libertarians can't defend you. They absolutely can't. And quite often, because there's not that many libertarians, if you are going to choose to defend a person or defend a movement or defend a group of people, oftentimes as a libertarian, it's going to be non-libertarians. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Well, no, I am saying that you shouldn't. I'm just not saying that you can't. I think strategically it is absolutely stupid, especially for these extreme leftist types to defend them in anything it is that they do or anything it is that they advocate or any conflict that they get in. I think that's stupid. I think you strategically you're not going to win that. They're not going to come on the other side of that thinking better about you. That's not how they operate. I said the same thing when it came to these movements such as that were tied to the Black Lives Matter deal and how they already had their identified ideas. They already have what it is that they advocate and what it is that they push, right? If you latch on to that and then you push their movement forward, no matter what your intentions are, effectively, you're just pushing what they want. You're not pushing what you want because they're not going to come out on the other side saying, hey, man, you helped us out. Yeah, maybe with this libertarianism thing isn't so bad. No. It's like, hey, thank you. We still don't like you. When does that ever work? It's funny when it will come to like the white nationalist types and libertarians didn't come to their defense. I don't remember anybody bitching about that. I'm not saying that you should have come to their defense. I just don't remember anybody bitching when they would get in those conflicts with the state, when they would have those little rallies and stuff. They'd have those conflicts with the government as well as other groups. Again, there's rival gangs involved. People never really expected us to get in the middle of that. And it was never assumed that we should get in the middle of that. Now, all of a sudden, again, that goes out the window. No, what's happening is that these groups are very, very good at trying to use you as useful idiots and then trying to guilt trip you into supporting them. It's not antithetical to my philosophy to not get in the way as you guys aggress upon each other. Again, I don't know where this binary thinking comes from. I can say that the state effectively kidnapping people is not good while also saying communism is trash. And a lot of people advocate for acts of aggression upon other people. So if it backfires on you, I'm not required to get in the middle of that. And definitely for communists, I would never do that. I do that for other more leftist guys, like more, let's say, leftists, like my mother. My mother is, I would consider her a more, kind of leans to the left, not as much. But there are people definitely from her era that definitely on a lot of social issues, they're not that leftist for sure. But in some capacity, yeah, they may support some of the Democrats, and I would defend those types of groups before I'd ever defend the communists. Not to say that I'm obligated to defend any group. Or we go to the other side. Let's say guys that are on the quote-unquote right. I've said time and time again, I do a lot of things. Like, for example, I do the Blaze. I do a lot of interviews with some of these groups. And it's not because I go actively looking for that stuff. It's because they're the only ones that'll hear me out. Did that video, and I said, the reason why I haven't appeared on leftist things is because they don't invite me. It's not because I won't go. If a leftist forum or something wanted me to, or a leftist wanted me to participate in a forum or something, and if I have the capacity to do it, I don't have any issue doing it. If I can do it. But I'm not going to beg to be embraced by you guys. And that's the reason why I end up, and to be fair, yes, they tend to be more responsive, more receptive to more so the libertarian philosophy. I don't care if you think that, yeah, I talk about it all the time and why I would never go out of my way to like ally myself with, let's say, mainstream conservatives. Because definitely when it comes to like the police and such, they'll defend them way too often, even when they're in error. And I say that, I've said that before. I've done videos on this, and I've even done videos talking about why. I have a video talking about that says why conservatives should reconsider their support for police and military, I think is the name of the video. And again, I've been on the Blaze talking about all of this before. They're more responsive to that. That's because they at least pretend like they value some concepts of liberty. They just inconsistently apply them. They're not anti-capitalist, or they pretend to not be anti-cap. They don't say like, "Oh, I'm against capitalism." That's their claim to value liberty. This is why I say that conservatives campaign like libertarians and govern like Democrats. You know, because they at least pretend like they'll value liberty, and that's why they're of the two mainstream groups. They'll hear out the libertarians way more than what the other side would. That's just what it is. I hate this whole, they're both two sides to the same coins. And I believe that they both have authoritarianism in them. However, they're not the same. And this goes back to the fact that a lot of libertarians have an inability to read the room. Strategically, they don't know what the hell they're doing. In order to package your message, you have to understand who it is that you're packaging it to. And to act as if they are both the same is an error. Because I wouldn't dare approach, let's say, the leftist musicians that I would perform in front of. I wouldn't approach them the same way if I were to say argue with a bunch of conservatives. They're different people. They respond to different things, and maybe some of you are effective in converting leftists. I was a leftist before. I remember I told you I used to be a Marxist. Now, losing arguments is what got me out of my position. But I don't think there's a worthwhile battle to be won, when it comes to not necessarily pandering, but defending leftists, at least the more extreme reforms. Certainly the guys that generally are showing up at the Portland Antifa types. But nah, man, like, I don't know where people get off trying to appeal to the libertarian position while having rejected it for so long. I just think it's weird. And even libertarians fall into this line like, whoa, you won't defend people when they disagree with you. Well, not certain types, no. And you won't either. Again, you don't feel libertarians falling over themselves for definitely in this day and age to try to defend more extreme forms of what they deem as the quote unquote right wing, which again, that's a spectrum that's not even useful. I've always said that they're more so on the same side. If we're going to use a useful economic spectrum, I don't like the idea of putting guys that advocate for similar things socially, or social politically, on opposite sides. This is why I say if we put communism on the opposite side of fascism, first of all, it's ahistorical. But that damn thing is useful. If that's your political spectrum, it's useful. Communists are right next to the fascists. But you don't expect us to be falling over ourselves to protect them or defend them. And I don't expect any libertarian to. I wouldn't ever advise you to when it comes to those, like the ones that are actual like Klansmen, not the ones that you claim are Klansmen. I'm talking about actual Klansmen, which are like 4 of them that exist, but they exist. Or actual statist white nationalists, they exist. And I wouldn't encourage you to get on their side either. White nationalists are generally socialists. Richard, go. Y'all remember a video I shared with Spencer was like, I don't know why people are so in opposition to socialism. I think socialism is a good thing. It's all this shit. It's like, dude, he's on y'all side. Y'all disagree on the whole race realism thing. That's it. Nonetheless, I'm not coming to the defense of damn communists. Communists getting into it with let's say state actors. Definitely, all right, like communists go to like a federal building, right? All right, so whether they jacked it or not, they've claimed it as their property. It's effectively the same thing that happened in like a territorial gang war, where you've gone to their property, what they've claimed is their property more so, and now y'all beefing, and y'all expect me to get in the middle of that and defend you because you losing the damn battle. Nah, y'all both are enemies of liberty, and I have no issue saying that. None. This whole you're just not defending them because you disagree with them. Of course, but it's not just because I disagree with. It's because they were not only. It's not about like we're talking about sports teams here or something like that. We're talking about ideologically, philosophically different, and they reject the core principles of libertarianism, and that is private property rights, starting with self-ownership. If they reject that, of course. Why would I defend you? I would defend more so groups or individual people. And of course, there's leeway here and there. I've caught myself defending leftists before, but I'm not going out of my way to do that. Especially if when you talk about groups that reject libertarianism in its entirety. No, and I think strategically, for libertarians to do so is foolish. Now, if you're gonna do that, you're in your right to do it. I want to be clear about that. You're in your right to do it. I'm just not doing it. No. Nah, absolutely not. They're rival gangs. I'm not in, and just because one of them losing because they may be outmatched, I have no reason to get in the middle of that. I don't see it helping me in getting in the middle of that. Like I said, man, a lot of people are only in opposition to the current state because it gets in the way of what it is that they want to enact. So when you come to maybe not on, there are leftists that will claim to be against gun owners or claim to be against, let's say, gun bans and such. But the folks that they're certainly in bed with are leftists that disagree with that assessment and are actively advocating for gun bans, that have been actively advocating for continuous lockdowns and mask wearing and such, as far as forced state induced and state imposed. Nah. For these types of groups then expect libertarians to come to their defense, as you've not only mocked us, you've advocated things that are antithetical to what it is that we advocate, and then you expect us like sad puppets, and some libertarians will oblige. I just ain't one of them. But expect us like sad puppets to run in behind you and help you out and assist you, because we just need people to cling to. You got the wrong guy. Libertarians aren't an obligation to save any one of you guys. And like I said, two things can be true. Well, this binary thing can come from. Be against the state. I'm always against the state, while also being against your silly ass. Oh, the states are winning. Why won't you help us? You're not my friend. It's kind of what it is. Now we're talking strategy. Now, again, I can be against what the state does in action. State kidnapping people, it's not good. It's a bad thing. It's not preferable. But me going out of my way to defend you because y'all started plexing? Nah. That ain't nothing that I would advise libertarians, especially when it comes to communists. There are groups that I think are worth maybe defending strategically. Communists just ain't one of them.